I hope I didn't make this too complicated and too difficult for you the last time. You have to understand how this particular book was put together that we're studying. The text that we're looking at is called the Mei HaShiloach, the waters of the Siloam pool, which is a name given to Rabbi Mordechai Yosef Lehner. Basically, giving him a name like this is saying that your mind is still waters that run very deep. That you are this amazing fountain of wisdom. And he put this name onto the book. He didn't actually write the book himself. He died in 1854. And like a lot of the great Hasidic rabbis, did not write his own things down. So what happened with this particular book is over 3 consecutive revisions, it gets written in 3 separate volumes. It's actually in print 2 volumes. But so if you want to look up Book of Genesis chapter 1, you want to look up at Parshat Bereshit, first Torah reading of the whole year, you go to volume 1. And then you go to volume 2, which is written several years later. And then you go to volume 3, which is the collected comments and teachings that were found in other people's books, where many of his students quote him directly. So what you have is very, very terse text. And when we get to read it, you'll see how terse and how tense it is. And I think it is a valuable exercise to look at the material, the texts that are behind what Mordechai Yosef is saying. So there's depth, there are nuances, there are things to be learned from putting our minds to work, putting on our thinking caps and looking, in this case, at a page of Talmud in the Masechet of Rosh Hashanah, which deals with what horn can be used for the shofar, and then going off into this list. I think the more time I spend with this particular piece of Gemara, and the more time I spend with the footnotes to the text that we're learning, the more I realize this is very, very deeply nuanced text. Other side of the coin, what he does in the book is say, here is a list of the months of the year, and here's a list of things to focus on in each of these months. Right? So instead of doing all of these things together, the 8 habits of highly spiritual people, or the 8 effective strategies for getting through the stormy waters of life, which is the previous ones that we did, here is something to think about. Here is an attitude of mind, a focus for each of the months of the year. And so when we do that, we are into the realm of what, for better or worse, we've called astrology. There is no other word for it. But this is what it is. And it's, I think, important to just keep a couple of things in mind. That if you are interested and this stuff is of interest to you, we will progress and look at some of the deeper stuff that comes along with all of the issues of what is the month. The biggest one and the biggest revelation is the one that I think I would like to do next. And that is, what is the verse in the Bible that goes along with this month? So, not your normal run-of-the-mill type of information or type of things that people study, but it is incredibly important, and I've got a worksheet for it. I don't think it's transliterated, but I'll get to doing that. You have to realize that there are constellations up in the sky, and that the constellations each refer to a month of the year, and they refer specifically and exclusively to the Hebrew month. We are here in the month of Av right now, and unlike if you look up your horoscope and you look up your forecast on the internet or a newspaper or a magazine, the constellation that rules, that deals with this particular month is Leo the lion, the Ari, the Aryeh, and that goes from the beginning of the month to the end. You're one of those? My daughter is too. I was born in Tammuz. I'm a Cancer. I am a little crab, which is why I'm often very, very crabby in nature. So that's a fundamental. It's always the Hebrew month, and for a lot of people that's a big shift. The constellation in and of itself means absolutely nothing. We said this last time, but I think it's important to repeat. The constellation as we see it is simply the way the stars line up from our point of view, at our particular point in history, from where we are standing here on planet Earth, and we join the dots that are the stars in the sky, and we make a picture of something that sort of looks like a lion, because we have in our mythology and our history lions, right? Astrology is not prescriptive. You cannot really and truly look at the Jewish writers on astrology, and not all of them were the Hasidic masters. You cannot look at the Sefer Yetzirah, for example, the Book of Creation. You cannot look at a couple of the other early medieval writers. It's a Sefer called Tzeidah Ladarech, Provisions for the Way. I can't remember exactly who wrote it. Tzeidah Ladarech. I printed it. It's from like the 11th century. It's from like the time of Rashi. And he's very big on what the signs all represent. Because people were talking about this, and he wanted to give Jewish people who were in the courts of royalty of his time something kosher to talk about regarding these subjects. You cannot use astrology to say, should I date this person and perhaps consider them as a realistic marriage partner? It's certainly useful to say, well, I'm born in this month, and this person I'm thinking about potentially marrying and spending my life with, well, they're born in that month, and let's see what there is about it. Let's see what there is to be said about all of that. There's about me, there's about this other person, and then let's see where that takes us in terms of learning. Right? There's no clear-cut pronouncements. A Cancer should not marry a Leo. There's no such thing. We don't have that kind of discussion, not in the text that we're looking at. And as we're going to see, there is a great deal of, I don't want to say uncertainty, but there is a great deal of things that are not precisely written in stone. Especially when you start looking at the things that connect with the number 12. We're looking at 12 tribes, 12 months, and when it comes to the tribes, they're alternates. There are 2 tribes that represent each month. They do double duty. Then you get to, again, we're in the Mea Shiloach, and this is very, very interesting stuff, where he starts talking about the leaders of the tribes in the time of the Bible. Because we've got a couple of lists of names of tribes, and if you look at Hebrew names, they're often very significant. Right? You look at English names or names in any language, there is a root meaning, but we don't always access it very easily. Hebrew names are very easy to decipher. And the names of the leaders of the tribes turn out to be very significant. And the names of characters in the Bible turn out to be very significant. And then there's the really nice and pleasant one, which is the stones on the breastplate of the high priest. Each one of those represents a tribe, which represents and connects with a month. So that's been a popular thing, that what is my birthstone and what does that refer to? So that's an exercise in just looking up on the internet what in antiquity do particular stones represent, and what does the Mea Shiloach tell us based on his knowledge of absolutely everything that was ever written up to and including his own time. Okay? So I've done another chart, and I am a little bit on the obsessive side by nature. So I really believe that things can be made more intelligible and more understandable when you have a chart, and if you have colored things on the chart, that everything is color-coded in my life. And this simply helps me. The 3 columns on the right give us the Sefer Yetzirah, which we talked about a little bit, which doesn't entirely line up with the focus that we get from our rabbi and our particular text. That is an issue. Why doesn't it? And how can we realign them? Do we want to even? The Talmud words took me a long time to figure this out, because in the text that we're going to start looking at in a minute, he doesn't have it exact, and he's got a couple of them reversed. In the Talmud, Rosh Hashanah 26a and b, number 9 comes before number 7. The not coming in order comes before the purslane seeds, right? Which is clear proof that we're talking about all sorts of weird stuff here. But this is serious. What Rav Mordechai Yosef has done, he's taken a page in the Talmud where there are 12 words that are being explained in Hebrew. 12 words that the rabbis of the time couldn't figure out for themselves. And through their travels, where they heard these words spoken, and through talking to people who spoke other languages, they figured out what these words mean. So the order in the Talmud is number 9 before number 8. So that would rearrange if there is indeed an intentional change here. Maybe it's a mistake in how they're presented in our book, which is not impossible. Maybe his volume of the Talmud read slightly differently, or maybe he intentionally switched the two around, because he wants to say that in the month of Iyar, you should focus on issues regarding your seed, right? Which is a nice sort of euphemism that men and women as well. I mean, the terminology and of course, is from a time when women didn't normally come to study all this stuff, not in the numbers that we see today. And the issues are presented in terms of men don't do this. But it's equally valid, and that is practice restraint in your sexual relationships. Don't throw your seed all over the place is the terminology that we're getting to. And whether we like it or not, the terminology is always adult. Zohar and this sort of stuff is always going to be graphic adult material, and if you're not comfortable with it, I'm afraid there isn't an awful lot of euphemism to put in. But maybe there is something to be said about the reversal of the order here, maybe there isn't. My purpose here today in this particular class is to make this simple. That you have a list of 10 things, and you open your calendar, and on the first day of the month of Tishrei, you write the words, remember that the door is already open. On the first day of the second month, you say, remember to keep your lust under control. In Kislev, the month of Kislev, third month of the year, remember to control your desires and your lusts for money. There's something to focus on each and every month of the year, and it makes an awful lot of sense to have a monthly focus. That's the simple beginning and end of it. The two left columns are of significance. The rest is more than icing on the cake. It's, if you want to continue the baking imagery, it's adding a couple of layers to the cake, right? As opposed to just being icing, but it is disposable and you can ignore it if you desire, right? Because I think one of the foundational issues with regard to the Hasidic movement is very, very straightforward. This is not a movement of the intellectual elite. One of the basic principles of Hasidism is to make Torah, to make Jewish mysticism, to make the real meaning of Torah available to absolutely everybody. And we've seen it. It's magically worked like this. And in our time, in the last 10 years, 20 years or so, we've seen how Hasidism has branched out even to the non-Jewish world. How non-Jews have embraced Zohar and mysticism. And whatever you think of non-Jewish people learning this, or not religious people learning this, the fact is, this is the ultimate wisdom. This is the ultimate understanding of what life is about and what Torah and Judaism is teaching us. And it should be accessible to absolutely everyone. Okay? So, having studied our pages of Gemara, and if you want my translation of these 2 pages, I do have it. I can send it to you. If you're watching us on YouTube and you want any of these handouts, give us a call. Send us an email, connect with us via the website. We'll be very happy to send you all of these things as a PDF. Okay? So I'm going to read from the original Hebrew text, and we'll take a look at the translation, but ultimately, really, what we're getting at is what to do each month of the year. And obviously, if you start counting up, it's a lot to do with controlling your libido. It's a lot to do with controlling your appetite. And it's a lot to do with focusing on Torah. 2 out of the 12 are Torah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of the 10 deal with various types of lusts. Anger is another one. Mocking people is a favorite of a lot of folks. And then you have the year is bracketed by Tishrei, the first month, and Elul, the last month, that God's always got your back. And God is always looking out for you. So here's how this gets expressed in the text. And I'm going to read some of the Hebrew. I'm going to do the best to translate it. And what you have on page 1 of the original handout from last time is the translation, which I have done. I take full responsibility for it. It is filled with errors, as always. I intentionally do this to give you, keep you on your toes. No, I just make mistakes and things, and that's that. So, he starts out, this is volume 1 of the Mea Shilach of Rav Mordechai Yosef Lehner of Ishbitz, 1801-1854, founder of the dynasty of Ishbitz Radzin. And so far in these classes and short series, we've been staying with this one book. He has a bunch of lists, and we've said before that lists are good things, right? Obsessive people like lists. And today we have Remember the Milk and all of these wonderful apps that help us remember things. So lists are good. This, though, does take us into the whole astrology thing, and we will be pursuing this a bit more. Unless you say you don't like it and you're not interested, and then we won't. Okay? So he starts off by quoting what the Talmud says, that the rabbis had a problem figuring out what it is exactly when we have to blow the shofar on Rosh Hashanah. And the term that they came up with is duchra, ram, a ram's horn. Duchar is literally male, the male of the sheep. And yovla is the trumpet of the Jubilee year. So this is going to be a pretty clear and very straightforward reading. So he says, here we have 12 things that represent the 12 months of the year. Duchra Yovla, the combination in this particular page of Talmud and in this discussion of a ram, its horn being blown in the Jubilee year. And what does the Jubilee represent? The Jubilee is freedom. In the Jubilee year, slaves go free. Land returns to its original owner. Right? So freedom. This refers to the month of Tishri, the first month of the Jewish year. Right? Ask any Jewish person, walk outside of here, stop 10 Jews on the street. What is the mood of the first month of the Jewish year? What is the mood of the month of Tishri? We'll get into the meanings of the actual words. The mood of the month of Tishri, I would hazard a guess that most people would say is very, very serious. It is a time of al-chait. I have sinned. I am a bad person. I need to repent. I have to beg God for forgiveness. Maybe God will bless me with a good year if I'm really good for at least the first week or two of the year. Right? How many people flock to synagogues on Rosh Hashanah on the New Year? Right? Here in Israel, you don't see this phenomenon quite so much. But the last congregation where I worked in Toronto, we put out, I think, 15 or 1,600 seats for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And, you know, a good bar mitzvah or a good wedding, we could seat maybe 400, 450. Triple. Probably about 10 times the average attendance. And people are scared. People who don't even have a very Jewish religious orientation have this notion of fear. God is judging us. And that's the picture we get throughout the whole liturgy, right? Rosh Hashanah is only about 6 weeks away from now. So we're dusting off the prayer books. We're beginning to start to see some classes and things on the subject. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, through the end of Sukkot, these are happy and wonderful holidays. And we get together with family and friends and all that sort of stuff. But they're very, very serious times. And the themes are God sitting as a king in judgment of each and every one of us and of the world as a whole. The exact opposite is found in a fair number of the great Hasidic rabbis. Right? Why do we have the horn and the horn of Jubilee, referring to Tishrei? Because in this month, a person must understand that God is able to take Israel to eternal freedom and show them that they were never enslaved at all, and no one ruled over them other than God alone. So we're talking about the freedom of the individual human being and your enslavement or your imprisonment by, you want to say by sin. I can't stop eating cheeseburgers for lunch every day, whatever bad thing it is, or the nation of Israel as a whole, where to some degree at least, we used to be under the thumb of the nations of the world. Today, thank the good Lord, Israel is a very powerful country. And we're up there with the biggest and most powerful nations. But the essence of this is, this time of year, God is indeed sitting in judgment of it all. But God has the ability and gives you the ability to walk out of that prison cell that you have made for yourself. The classic that he brings, and this is again Mea Shilach, this is Mordechai Yosef Ishbitz, talking about Joseph and his brothers. Right? You're all familiar with that story. Right? Nod your heads, yes, of course you are. What happens? Joseph gets sold into slavery, he becomes the prime minister, the viceroy of Egypt, and the brothers come down in great need during a time of famine. And he plays around with them. And he makes them believe that he thinks, and he's accusing them of being spies. And they're about to be thrown into prison. What is it Shimon or Yehuda says at the very, very end? We give up. Right? The very last lines of that whole story. The brothers say, give up. We are your slaves. Throw us into prison. Do what you want with us. This all happened because we sold Joseph into slavery. We were wrong. We deserve this punishment. And this wicked Egyptian, well, you are a wicked Egyptian, and you're falsely accusing us of being spies. We're not, but we deserve it anyway. We're going to take our punishment. And then Joseph reveals himself. He says 3 words. He says, I am Joseph, your brother. That's 4 words in English. It's 3 words in Hebrew. And the whole world changes. The oppressor was actually their brother. And he's putting it here, the same thought, into a bigger context. And he says it there, and he says it in each of the volumes of the book, that the individual Jew, Israel is a nation. We are freed from our difficulties. We are freed from our prisons. We are freed from our slaveries. We are freed from our addictions, our problems, whatever they may be. And then you realize that, oh, this was just God doing this to us. And it's all part of the plan. And we were never in any real trouble or danger at all. And that's like a fundamental change. That's a total sea change in the attitude that we normally have to this particular month of the year. We're told people tremble on these sort of days. People cry and moan, and the reality is you have to go into this with confidence. It's like Shlomo Carlebach says, yeah, the king is judging us, but the king's my father. Right? That changes everything. That makes that a happy time of the year. We know it's going to be all right in the end. Right? So have this attitude in this time of the year, and of course use it for self-reflection and for meditation and for writing out little cards and making affirmations. Right? You meet people who make affirmations all the time and share them with you. I've always found that to be a little bit irritating. Why do I need to hear your affirmation? But they help. It helps to say things. Write it in your calendar. Write it on the back of your hand. Write it on a card. Put it in your prayer book that you open up every day. Here's what I'm going to be thinking, what I'm going to be focusing on, and how I'm going to be approaching my life for the next 30 days or 29 days, whatever the month has. Right? The difficulties and issues are, of course, when we look at the original source in the Sefer Yetzirah, that we don't have a clear parallel. The different versions, and there are 4 or 5 of them, don't parallel here. As they say in the vernacular, nish gefährlich, right? It's not the end of the world, right? Number 2, he's going to take this number 2, the second vocabulary word here. Rabbi Akiva said, when I went to Gaul, shalachti legolya, I went to France. Hayu korin lenida galmuda. They spoke of a woman at that particular time as a gal muda. There is actually a opening up for how this works. She's separated from her husband, as all physical contact is not allowed. I'm glad I wrote this translation down. Right? This refers to the second month of the year, Kislev, because in this month a person must purify and clarify himself in his desires. I am missing something. Hang on. Have I done something wrong again? Yeah, I just skipped down, sorry. Cheshvan, you're not following, folks. Kislev is the third month, Cheshvan is the second month. Okay. This is why I need to do this out loud and with people, so you will notice. Right, so the first month is Tishrei. The second month is, in fact, Cheshvan. And that is the month a person has to purify himself from ta'ava, from lust regarding sexual activity. Right? Is there any logic behind that in the world as a whole? We're going into the winter months. We're staying home more. I have no clue. But there are other issues, and if you stick with us, we'll get to the Bible verses and the God's name permutation thing, which may be of some help and understanding to us. But Mordechai Yosef is just saying to us straight out, the month of Cheshvan is for controlling and keeping your libido where it's supposed to be. Right? So month number 3, I even have the numbers here and I still get them mixed up. Hayukorin lema'a keshita. Again, words that he got from having gone to France in a long time ago, 2nd century CE, something like that. Rabbi Akiva lived in the hundreds and something like that.
Yeah. He saw the photo and he was around by Bar Kokhba, 136.
So, is the year 100 or so, he made a trip to France. And didn't take a plane, I guess it was a good deal more difficult back then. But he brought back these nuggets of wisdom and words that he was able to understand because he had heard them spoken in French, or whatever old language they spoke there. And this refers to Kislev, the third month of the year, because in this month, a person must purify himself with regard to his desire and his lust for money. Keshita is the word that is there. It is standard of value. What is the practical application of this? And that's the 1, 2, 3, 4, the fifth column, right? Sorry to do this to you, but the fifth column is the verse Genesis 33, speaking about he bought a parcel of ground from the sons of Hamor for 100 kisita. Or is it kishita? One or the other, mea kisita. One or the other. It's an S or an SH. He bought it for 100 of this, and it's 100 units of currency. Right? So this is the month of keeping track of your money, doing your accounts. Right? Not April, right? Got to do your accounts, and you got to get your taxes ready. But obviously, we're talking about much more than that. What is it you're spending your money on, right? Instead of just making an accounting of what you have to deal with in terms of the tax authorities here or wherever you come from, you've got to deal with what are you prioritizing by spending the most money on. How much money are you spending on going to the movies? In my case, nothing, right? How much money are you spending on eating out? How much money are you spending on buying books of Torah? How much do you put into tzedakah? Right? All these sort of good and useful things. Because maybe this is a very good idea to gauge what your real priorities are. And if you sit down in the month of Kislev and you write down how much you spend on everything, maybe you'll be surprised. And hopefully you'll be surprised in a good way that you give tons and tons of money to tzedakah and you waste very, very little. Number 4, month of Tevet. Right, you have to have in the back of your mind that also these months have specific holidays in them, and we're into also fasts, right? We just got through some of the really sad fast days of the year. That there are fasts and there are festivals in these months, and these also come along with the character of the month. Right? So month number 4 is the month of Tevet. And just to try and bring the example in here, Asara b'Tevet, one of the fasts connected with the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple and all that begins there. So they called a kira a mechira. When I went to the sea town, says Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, I heard them referring to mechira, which is a sale, as kira. Somehow or other this came up in conversation. He heard this local term and then he said, oh, eureka, now I understand Bereshit 50, Genesis chapter 50, where Jacob buys a burial plot and he says, bury me in the grave which I purchase, asher kariti li, purchase for myself, whereas the standard translation is karaz, to dig. Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi says, no, it doesn't mean dig. You go dig a hole in the ground, that's kara. But here it says kariti specifically, which I bought. So there is a practical understanding of it, and this does make sense. The thing we have to deal with in this particular month, which is word number 4 in the vocabulary list, and month number 4, anger. You have to be particular levarer atzmo, right? Bet resh. Resh is a good Hebrew word. It means to purify, to sift, right? When you talk about the laws and the malachot of Shabbat, sifting the stuff you don't want out of the flour, but also purify, to clear and purify yourself with regard to the issue of anger. Why does this come here? V'zeh ikar shoresh goy. Totally politically incorrect sort of stuff here. Sorry, folks. The nations of the world represent certain things. Each nation has its own characteristic. The Persians do this, the English are that. The Irish stand for BDS these days, right? Historically, but in terms of what we're looking at, there are specific things that each nation represents. And he is saying here, what every nation together, other than Israel, represents is anger. Why? Because in the great world out there, the other nations are mikubar, are buried under this particular characteristic. Not a pleasant sort of assessment of the nations of the world. But, you know, we would like to say we're part of the United Nations, all people are good, but let's do a little bit of political stuff, take Rabbi Kessen's territory just slightly. Look at the anger that there is against the nation of Israel today. As plain as the nose on your face. You go somewhere and you are identifiable as a Jew, that is considered sufficient a provocation to do you some harm, to consider you a criminal. How does this happen? And in their day, they were not enjoying the great freedoms that we supposedly enjoy today, or that we did enjoy for a while at least, right? This is the first half of the 19th century, in the 1800s in Eastern Europe. Jews did not have self-determination, and were not doing terribly well. But here we're looking at an issue of what is it that Jews are about as opposed to non-Jews, right? Obviously not every non-Jewish person and not every nation of the world is filled with hate. But on a cosmic scale, we are love, they're the opposite. And you get to see what love is and what good is by seeing and experiencing the exact opposite. Right? This is a very profound kernel that comes from Reb Tzadok HaKohen, who is one of the major students and explainers of the Mea Shilach. This particular book is real short and real tense and terse, but Reb Tzadok writes volumes, tons and tons of stuff. And one of his basic thoughts is that good things come into the world encapsulated in their exact opposite. For you to experience love, you first have to experience hate. For you to be able to love, you first have to even have a taste of hating yourself.
They say before you start a shir, you should tell a joke. So the idea of to tell the difference between folly and truth.
This is a good one. I've never heard it explained like that. Shkoyach. The classic formulation is light only exists in contradistinction to darkness. Darkness is first, then light. And that is really a very fundamental thought that explains all of this sort of Ishbitz thinking. But the hate is there and the love is here. And this is what these things represent. Yeah, not every non-Jew is a hater, right? Plenty of non-Jewish people out there who love us. Plenty of entire nations who actually love us. But the representation that we're looking at is the yay versus the nay, the good versus the not so good. So this is a particular month. We're looking at the fourth item in this vocabulary sheet and the fourth month of the year. It's all about anger. It's all about controlling your anger and not letting you bury yourself in it. Right? So far, we haven't touched on constellations and stuff like this at all, and what that sort of stuff has in terms of meaning. That's the next stage. That's the next stage. Okay. Month number 5. Month number 5. This is a slightly odd one, but it does work. And the Talmud tells us Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish said he went to a certain place where a bride is called Ninfi. I believe the connection that Jastrow makes in the dictionary is nymph. Right? You would not call a woman a nymph in our time. It would be an enormous insult, I think. But the term seems to be similar. Beautiful like a bride. The text and the thing that they are actually connecting with is where the word ninfi is used, that a woman, no, here it is, Gemara in Pesachim, tractate dealing with Passover, a bride turns her face aside when she eats. So a bride on the day of her wedding doesn't want to be seen crudely stuffing food into her face.
Like the first date.
Like on the first date, right? No. It depends. Depends what you're interested in, right? We're only interested in things spiritual. But a bride represents the absolute height of feminine etiquette. How a woman or how a man should behave. You don't want to be seen eating. So this is the month that, again, we're discarding this whole background and this whole ton of stuff that there is behind it. And there are numerous sources here that we're dealing with and just largely pushing aside because we want to get to the basic point. The month of Shvat has to do with eating in what we would call a polite and ladylike manner. Don't be a glutton. Don't make a pig of yourself. Leave some food on the table. The verse is Tzaddik ochel l'sova nafsho. A righteous person eats to the satisfaction of his soul and his spirit, not the stomach. Right? You eat enough to get by. You eat for pleasure. Food does have good taste to it, and many of us really enjoy eating. But don't make this the focus of your life. Maybe in the month of Shvat, keep a note of what you eat. And realize, how many candy bars have I eaten that month? How many times did I go to the bakery and buy cake and eat it on the way home so my wife wouldn't know? You know? This is, so no one will see me eating. What are we really doing? Is there eating for pleasure or is there eating for a spiritual goal? And that's a biggie. That really is a biggie. Because eating is like so fundamental to us. And sharing food is so much of our culture. Going out to eat with people, inviting them into your home, Shabbat here, Chagim, all the holidays here. It's all about having people over and feeding them and enjoying them and showing off what wonderful stuff I made, and right? And then your guests bring food, and it's not about the food. It's about the connection with the people, and it's about what the food really does, and that is fuel your body and your mind and your spirit, right? Number 6, month number 6. We're halfway through the year. Again, this is Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish. He went to this particular location and he saw a rooster being called a sechvi. Right? And if you're familiar with the morning service, Hanotein la sechvi vina, which is frequently translated as, thank you God for giving the rooster the ability to distinguish between day and night and wake us up. The roosters in this neighborhood in Jerusalem crow morning, noon, and night. Right? You need an alarm clock. So the verse that this helps us understand is a verse in Job 38, right? Not everybody's favorite book to look up. But the verse says, "Who has God, you have given understanding to the sechvi," to the knowledge, to the wisdom,
To the heart.
to the heart or to the inner parts. Yeah. You have within yourself wisdom. You have the sense not to laugh at everything. Right? He says here, And I'm just going to translate it, and I've translated here. It's on the second page of the original handout. In this particular month of Adar, a person must purify himself mileitzanut, from mocking, and kalut rosh, and for lightheadedness, clowning around and frivolity. V'zehu anotein lasech vivina, and that is the real meaning of the blessing that we say at the beginning of the day, that God gives either the mind understanding or the rooster understanding. So the rooster's a pretty funny looking animal. And be serious. Be serious. Watch comedy shows. Have a good laugh. Don't laugh at other people. Don't take advantage of someone else's stupidity to make a joke. Right? That's a big temptation, especially, with us. We're the intellectual elite here. And there are a lot of people who are not so smart and not so learned. And think about who you're laughing at. Spend the month of Adar thinking about the exact opposite of what the month of Adar is normally thinking about. Right? What happens in the month of Adar? Purim. Right? Purim is a day of great frivolity, laughter. Right? All of these things fit really well with the holidays that occur in each month. And if we continue with this whole series, we will get into this sort of stuff. That Purim is the time of frivolity and laughter, masquerades, putting on masks, making a Purim spiel, a Purim play in which everything is turned upside down. The serious is made funny and the funny is made serious. Right? Classic is Purim Torah, right? Where people do serious Torah lectures on essentially stupidity, right? The Jewish law of baseball, very, very famous one, right? Where it's set out like a page of the Talmud, right? There's one on the received wisdom of Homer Simpson, right? These are absolute classics that get recycled. Laugh at stuff. Laugh at The Simpsons. Laugh at baseball. But don't laugh at other people. Don't make light of everything. Don't make fun of yourself. Because everything and everyone was made by God and put here for a purpose. Spend the month of Adar thinking about, look at all these people clowning around. Am I part of that all year round? Is that really me? What am I? How serious do I have to be? There's a time for laughter. There's a time to sit down and, make fun of people and make fun of each other. But that's when you know the person can take it and when you understand that it's a joke. But not everybody takes a joke. An awful lot of people don't get humor, right? And a lot of people don't get certain types of humor. And if you come from England, there's a certain type of humor that is not appreciated or understood in America, right? And what's funny in Ireland is not funny in Israel, right? And Canadians have a sense of humor as well. So. Okay, number 7, month number 7. This really I got mixed up with, but it's actually quite simple. The Talmud here in Rosh Hashanah, there are more words in foreign countries. A certain rabbi met a man who said, "This individual did a kabbalah to me." And he didn't know what it meant until he discovered that they have a verse in Malachi chapter 3. Can a person rob God? Hayikba Adam. Can a person rob God? And there's a certain amount of discussion about this, but theft. Word number 7 parallels month number 7, which is the month of Nisan. Tzarich Adam l'hitbarer, you have to mitbarer, you have to purify yourself. B'kinyan she'eno shelo. Kinyan is a purchase or taking possession of something that is not yours. So, what have you walked off with? The month of Nisan is a month of Pesach, right? It's a month of spring cleaning, right? 2 weeks before Pesach, which is the 15th, middle of the month, what do? You clean every nook and cranny of your house. While you're doing that, while you're in the mood for that, maybe that's the thought behind this. Look at not just where the chametz is, where the leaven is, where the non-Pesach food is, but look at all your stuff as well. Did you borrow an item of clothing? Us men don't do this very much, right? I don't know when's the last time I ever borrowed anything, right? Certainly in terms of clothing. Books. I know I have many of Rabbi Poston's books at home. And he knows they're safe with me, right? But this is the month where I should look for other people's books that I've borrowed and not returned and maybe missing them or don't even know that they're missing them, right? Other things too. Cooking utensils, tools, power tools. Power tools are unique for going and staying with other people. So use here, like the previous month with Adar, we said going against the tide of the frivolity. But here, using the tide of the month and the current of the month, which is tidiness, cleaning up, cleaning house. Here we have the interesting one where they're reversed. Where here in the Mei HaShiloach, he's reversed the order in the Talmud. 8 and 9, whereas here we have 9 coming before 8. And we got to figure this out, what it means, if there is any meaning in it at all. Neged Chodesh Iyar, which is the 8th month of the year, a person has to be careful, and the term is Mikre Laila, nighttime accidents, which means specifically nighttime emissions of seed. You need to be careful to keep your libido, your sexual desires, in the proper place and time. What are you thinking about when you're lying in bed at night, right? Not about what you shouldn't be thinking about, right? And the term comes from this really odd word chalag log. What is a chalag log? I looked it up. The translations do tell you, but Jastrow says it is a chalag log and is a purslane plant. I have never heard of a purslane plant outside of this, but apparently it grows in many countries of the world and is a food plant. And the piece of Talmud that we're looking at here refers to somewhere in Eretz Yisrael here, that the sages did not know the meaning of chalag log, which does occur in the Mishnah and in the Gemara a couple of times, that the expression was used when are you going to stop scattering your purslane plants and seeds all over the place? Keep them to yourself. It is a food plant. If you go to Wikipedia and the internet, you will find recipes, and it supposedly tastes good and makes an excellent salad. I don't eat salad, so I don't care. But, right? One seed is one seed, and a plant is what you do with it. You plant it. Don't. I mean, the Hasidic rabbis are very, very heavy into this, and they speak a lot to men about controlling their lower regions. And the issues are really very straightforward. That the basic point is, number one, that your thought goes into your seed. It doesn't come from chemicals and various things in various parts of your body, but the seed comes from up here, from your mind. And there's a lot of implications of all of that. And in addition, the seed, if it is not placed where it's supposed to go, then it has the effect of souls being produced, sparks of holiness going out into the world and not having a body, which goes back to the whole creation story in Adam, which is a complicated Zohar Kabbalistic picture, but it's something we can learn and talk about if you feel the urge. Very, very big. Very, very big issue. Don't let it out other than where it's supposed to go. Okay, so that's month number 8. And, looking at the Sefer Yetzirah, the SY there line, which is the third line there, thought. What are you thinking about? Where are your thoughts really going? Are your thoughts going into lustful thoughts about someone who you're not married to? Or are you using your abilities and your mental energies properly? Right? What holidays are there in the month of Iyar? None, right? Hey Iyar, Yom HaAtzmaut, right? 9, month number 9, Sivan. Again, it's this whole word origin thing that we're starting with. So word origin number 8, actually, but it goes in month number 9 here in our text, refers to the month of Sivan, and the term is sirugin, not in order. So the basic halacha that the Gemara is talking about there is reading the Megillah, reading the scroll on Purim, that if you do not read the chapters in the correct order, you are not obligated, you have not fulfilled your obligation. The thing that you have to do is not do things out of order. Diligence, order in study of Torah. This is the month when you get the Torah, right? God gives the Torah to the people in the 6th of Sivan, right? In the holiday of Shavuot. This is an incredibly important time for the entire world. Take the book, start at the beginning. Follow an order and a sequence of study. Don't just open up anything everywhere, which is sort of the contemporary way of doing things. We have so many books available and so many things that you can just download and read. Make yourself a course of study. Achieve something. Read and study one book beginning to end. Okay. Following on, the month of Tammuz, right? Month number 10, Salsala. Again, specific texts and words that we're trying to understand, to turn things over, to twirl or to turn. Neged Chodesh Tammuz, that you have to chaber atzmo, connect yourself to Torah and search after them. The implication seems to be an understanding of the verse here, that turn the Torah over in all directions. This is Jastro's translation, again going back straight to the dictionary. The verse that they are referring to is turn wisdom about, and it will exalt you. A verse in Proverbs chapter 4, Proverbs 4:8. Turn it around and it will raise you up. Turn Torah around. Look at it from all angles. Apply it to all things. And then it's going to lift you up and raise you up to the highest levels. Right? In month number 9, we were working on an order of study. In month number 10, we're working on getting Torah to everything and everywhere, seeing all the sides of it. Right? Month number 11. The verse is in Isaiah 14. The sages did not know what was meant by the word matateh, which we know today as a mop. But the verse translates as sweep away with the broom of destruction. So, what is that about? And how are we going to fix this? This is the month of Av. The broom of destruction was applied to the temple here in Jerusalem in the month of Av. The Jewish people were swept away from our homeland. Let's turn that upside down. You have to purify yourself from all types of desires. All types of desires. Everything. And again, back to the nation. right? We were talking about the totality of nations as a whole, representing anger. Here, each single nation represents chemda miyuchedet, an individual desire or lust. He's going to say this numerous times in many different ways, that every nation of the world, and we're talking largely about the classical nations from the biblical listing point of view rather than France, Italy, Switzerland, but you can do it with that as well. Each nation has something that it stands for. It has a quality. Here he's talking about it in terms of chemda, a desire or a lust. The French love food. The Italians love wine and talking very loudly, right? Whatever this particular thing is, and he does get into it, and the students and the next generations get into it as well. All of these nations exist, and they represent various types of desires and lusts. And what we have to do is sweep them out of our lives, sweep them out of the world. When all of these nations will become batel, when they will be annulled and abolished, then all the bad desires will be gone. The issue is, what is the whole thing about the nations of the world losing their power? They have certain forces, they have certain things that keep them going. They have certain powers that can be used for good and bad. And this is the whole fundamental thing with the astrology stuff. The month has a power that either you can let it overtake you and pull you in the wrong direction, or you can say, no, this is an energy that I can use for good. And it'll take me higher, it'll make me a better person. That our job is to take the characteristics, the desires, the major themes of the nations of the world, purify them of the negative stuff that they have when the power is over there, and bring it into our particular world, into Kedusha. Let's just take a very simple, straightforward example. We'll pick on the French, since none of us are from France, right? France is eating, cooking, right? And cooking and eating can lead to all sorts of gluttony and high cholesterol and everything bad. What we have to do with the power of France is take cooking and eating to use it for bringing people together, for breaking down the barriers between different types of people. If I bring you some really good cake right now, you'll be happy. You'll like me a bit more. We'll get along a bit better, right? If I invite you to my home and I cook one of my specialities, you'll be more receptive to learning some Torah from me. We can open this book and we can sort of learn it in the original, because you're no longer afraid of me. You no longer see me as, I don't know, the stern rabbi. It was a character I was able to pull out with bar mitzvah students once in a while. Scare them into learning the stuff that they had to learn. It was very hard to do, but it's like that, right? So, you know, we're not picking on the French or on France, but that's just a classic example. Take the things that are represented by the nations, take the lusts, take the desires, take the negativity that you can count up for so many countries and so many places, and say, no, I want the good side of that. And then sweep away all the bad stuff. And then you get to a perfect world where there is only one nation, right? He's obviously pushing us towards that point, where there is only one nation. There is Israel and everybody else. And everything is good. And everyone acknowledges that the good resides here. Last one. Number 12. Yehavcha. It is a verse in Psalm number 55. Cast upon the Lord Yehavcha, your Yahav, and God will sustain you. The sages did not know the meaning of what Yehavcha means, And Rabbi Bar Bachana, the very last lines, one day I was traveling with a certain Arab, and he was carrying a load, and he said to me, he saw that I, the rabbi, was carrying a load, and he said to me, take your yahav and put it on my camel. From which I understood that yahav means a load or a burden that you're carrying around. What's this got to do with the month of Elul? Right? When the month of Elul begins, we start blowing the shofar, and the shofar is, usually a virtuoso performance, and we look at it as such. The shofar is supposed to scare the wits out of you and wake you up to repent and remember all your bad deeds. Again, turning the whole thing around. You come to the end of the year. It's month number 12. You've done 11 months of introspection. You've worked on your lust for money. You've worked on your anger. You've worked on your eating. You've worked on all those things that you borrowed and never returned. You've worked on your Torah study practices. And comes to month 12 and you go, uh-oh, I really haven't done very well at all. Month number 12, what this means is, if you say, how is it possible to purify myself in all of these 11 things? For this verse it is said, cast upon God your burden. He's going to carry you and sustain you. Timsor et atzmacha. Give yourself over to God. V'hu yivarer otcha, and He will purify you. Right? And that's the end of it. The rest of the text talks about a parallel passage here in the Meh HaShilach where he says all of this again, but switches it around a little bit rather than a Rosh Hashanah focus, Purim focus.
Does he connect a little bit more why each month, the nature of the month connects this way to each one?
It's a given, and it's a given in the footnote that you have. I think it's page 3 of the text. That all of these things are organized according to that which is written in the Sefer Yetzirah, which it isn't, right? Or it's certainly not obviously so. And al pi tzirufei shemot she'asad ha'arizal l'chol chodesh. I think we're going to be a lot better off looking at the really complicated thing that is not really that complicated, the permutation of God's name that rules over each month. So each month has a constellation, each month has a thing of the body, hearing, sight, movement, thought, etc. Each month has a body part, each month has a letter, each month has a name.
But are you going to present that?
I am going to get to that if you good people are willing to sit and listen to it. What I want to bring in the next time is a list of the permutations of God's name. And this is from the Arizal. We'll talk a little bit about who the Ari was. Lived up in Tzfat. And largely, when you read the writings of the Arizal, accept what he says. A lot, if not all of what he says, comes without proof text and without support. It's stuff straight from heaven that he got, and his students, Rabbi Chaim Vital and others, just wrote it down and said, here it is. So,
is there a source for that? In other words, take a Yud K Vav K, which is for the month of Nisan, or the Vav Hey, whatever Yud Hey, is a different computation for different months.
right.
There is a Chassidut.
There's a verse that goes with it.
That goes with that permutation, because that's the Reishi Tevos of somewhere in the verse. Then that verse directly relates to the whole concept of the month.
Yeah.
You do that when you...
Oh, yeah. When I did this last time, we did this at Shir Chadash, and it's this particular handout. Yeah, I haven't transliterated the words. What I'll do is I'll make a sheet and transliterate the verses. But fortunately or unfortunately, if your Hebrew is not so great, I'm going to make sure this is very, very clear. God's name has 4 letters, and for this purpose, the Hey and the Hey are taken to be the same. and it has 12 permutations, and each one goes with each month, and that fits onto a verse, mostly the first letter or the last letter. Mostly first letters, but also last letters. It comes as an acronym of 4 words within a particular verse.
In a particular order.
In a particular verse in that order. So it's nothing like you think it is. Nothing like you think it is. You want one example?
Yes.
Okay, this is the month of Av, right? Leo the lion. It is the month of Shimon, the tribe of Shimon. It is the month of hearing, Shmi'ah, listening. The verse is from Deuteronomy, Devarim chapter 27. Moses and the Levitical priests spoke to all Israel, saying, "Pay attention and listen, O Israel. This day you have become a people to the Lord your God." The permutation comes in the words, Hasket u'shma Yisrael hayom. It is right in the middle. Pay attention and listen, Israel, today. Right? So that fits with Shimon the tribe. Shema,
You
Shama.
said it means listening, right?
Listening. It is the month.
Listening, the name Shimon.
The name Shimon is from Shema, from listen, to hear. And also you should go back to the birth of the tribes. How did they all get their names? Right? Their mommies gave them names. Right? And each of the matriarchs gave the child a name relative to something that was happening at that particular time in their lives. Right? So there's a connection. Right? Who was the mother of Shimon?
What's Rachel?
It had to be Leah, right?
Or the
Leah has Reuven first, then Shimon.
second born, right?
Shama Hashem et oni. God heard my affliction and my pain that I do not have children, right? In those days, having children was life, right? So it's to do with not just hearing, but hearing the embarrassment and the emotional pain of a person, right? Not just hearing things and listening and paying attention to what's being said in classes and to the signs that you're being given around you, but hearing the pain of other people, hearing and noticing their difficulties. Does that fit what we have in our charts?
Yeah.
Hearing, yeah, but sweep away all desires. How are you going to reconcile that one?
I don't know, but let me answer your question. I mean, everyone agrees that Shimon is Av?
No.
Right. So if
There's
it's
a list.
Yehuda, then I can understand. If you're talking about a lion, right?
Yep.
And Aryeh, it's Yehuda, which is like a lion.
Right?
So then you talk about overcoming your desires, like,
Okay, I have the book, so I can be really smart and just look it up. Month of Av, Leo, right? Hey, Vav, Yud, Hey, which fits in that verse. According to the most commonly used list of the tribes, to line them up, it is Shimon, right? Which fits with hearing. But with the birth order of the tribes, it's Yisachar.
that's Torah.
Yisachar is Torah. Right, and is understanding the times, right? The verse about Yisachar is B'nei Yisachar Yodei Bina La'itim.
They know how to read the stars.
They know how to read the stars. What's the Sefer B'nei Yisachar about? Astrology.
Yes.
It's about all of this stuff. This is one of the major sources that we read. How does that fit in what the Meh HaShilach is telling you to do on this particular month? Get all your desires under control. Use Torah.
So if Yisachar, I would understand all your desires. But if it's Shimon,
If it's Shimon, I don't know. Listen to where your thoughts are leading you.
they're controlling you.
I don't know. The source that you have to look for these sort of reconciliations between the lists of the tribes, where it's one and the other, is the Shemi Shmuel.
So the only options are Shimon or Yisachar?
The only options are Shimon or
So
Yisachar.
why did I always think it was Yehuda, without looking at any book?
No idea.
Is it the lion?
Gur Aryeh Yehuda, right? Judah is a lion. The lion is a symbol of majesty and power.
Well, Shimon didn't really have a territory of his own with any border. He was within Yehuda.
Right.
So maybe that's also
Yehuda comes up for the month of Tammuz or Nisan. Right? There's more. There's the names of the princes of the tribes. That's another Me'er Shiloach text. There's the stones on the breastplate. That's another one that's really nice. That's a very pleasant and happy one to read. And if you want to get into all of these difficulties that need reconciling, Shemi Shmuel, who was one of the very easiest of the Hasidic masters to read.
in fact, the Gentile world, the non-religious world, has an idea of birthstones based on the month, based on some type of stone,
Yep.
and no doubt that they got it from the breastplate.
100%. The problem is identifying which stone is which. I believe the Temple Institute website says there are 30 different possibilities for 12 stones. So, and the names of the stones have meaning, right? We're dealing with Hebrew words. The names of all the stones have meaning. And then there's also what the stones were referred to and were supposedly good for in antiquity, right? Because that's where they are tapping into. They're tapping into a wisdom that is from ancient times. What is an amethyst good for? What is an opal for? Right? And what is its supposed power? I have a citrine sitting on my desk that supposedly clears the air of negative feelings. So I'm a very negative person by nature. Right? So it's a nice, pleasant orange little stone. Okay, so we will continue this next week. Right. Tuesday and Thursday at the same sort of time. We are going to force you to do a little bit of Hebrew reading. And you will like it.